This is a nightmare in real time. Ukrainian fighters, stripped of their weapons and armor, are being marched away by the enemy. In this war, being captured often means a death sentence. What caused this frontline collapse? How did the enemy end up in the Ukrainian rear unnoticed? Today, we're breaking down the chain of events that led to this trap and the desperate high-stakes gamble to bring these boys back alive. This is how it happened. A few dozen meters away, in roughly 50 to 100 feet, silhouettes slowly emerge from the fog. It's another group of Russian assault troops in full kit, moving toward the building where the Ukrainian fighters are being held. They're closing in on the village house, gripping their tuned-up AK-12s. The Russians look like they're 100% sure of success, because they know no one's expecting them.
What the hell is going on out there?
A Ukrainian reconnaissance drone is hanging in the sky above, watching everything. The prisoners, the Russians who are about to burst through that door. But due to lost comms, the commander watching it all on his screen can't warn his guys about the danger closing in. But the problem isn't just the lost comms. The real trouble is that the Russians are coming from the direction where other Ukrainian units are supposed to be positioned. Why did a Russian assault group end up exactly where friendlies should have been? Finally, a radio message comes through. One of the units couldn't hold its position and pulled back. Where friendlies once stood, there's now a gap, and the Russians are already pouring through it like water through a blown dam. For the Ukrainian units scattered across the village and its outskirts, that's a death sentence, because they're convinced the front is ahead of them, when in reality it's already passed right through them. When the enemy comes from behind, positions stop being positions and turn into traps. Routes of withdrawal get cut off, groups lose contact with each other, and in the chaos, the worst things start to happen. What's going to happen to the guys now? Breakthroughs like this are usually handled by specialized units, but this time they'll have to stop the wave themselves because there's no time to wait for anyone, and that wave is already rolling. While commanders scramble to figure out the scale of the disaster, they still need to get their guys out of that building. But how?
We've got cluster munitions. Let's at least hit them once.
If you've never seen what artillery support looks like up close in a near-contact fight, hit like and subscribe to our channel, because what you're about to see is absolutely worth it. Thank you. So the Russians begin clearing the building, and they're doing it by the book. A grenade goes into the shed next to the house, then another. The Ukrainian soldiers inside the house are next, but in the next moment, help suddenly drops in from the sky. A godsend. The trick works, because two Russian assault troops break and run away from the house. While the Russians are moving across the field, the Ukrainians manage to get an FPV drone in the air, and it runs them down. But you're probably wondering, how safe is it to call in artillery when your own guys are right there? Here's the thing. Cluster munitions are extremely effective against enemy infantry, even when they land close to your own positions. But only if your fighters are under cover, and the enemy's fighters are out in the open. And you've got to admit, giving that order takes serious guts. Drop a comment below. Would you have made that call if you were confident in your artillery crew's skill? But the adventures of the Ukrainians inside that house aren't over yet, because it's clear that someone else has eyes on this battlefield, not just Ukrainian recon UAVs. A few minutes later, Russian drones start arriving at the house, and step by step they begin methodically tearing apart the cover the Ukrainian fighters are sheltering in.
That's already the second strike on our house.
The only thing saving the Ukrainians is the clay walls. Turns out, those old houses built from clay 100 years ago absorb shrapnel better and hold up against blast waves far more effectively than modern brick buildings.
This clay shack took 30 FPV hits. Yeah, some walls collapsed, there are wounded, but all the guys are alive, all 6 of them.
That's yet another discovery this war has handed us. But after several dozen explosions, it becomes clear that the Russians aren't going to stop demolishing that shelter until they've wiped out the Ukrainian group entirely. Under cover of a smokescreen, the fighters break out of the building and make it to a neighboring house. It seems like the adrenaline in the Ukrainian command post is running just as high. It's worth saying, every one of these commanders has real ground experience, so they know exactly what their fighters are feeling when they're staring into the abyss. Their relief is just as unfiltered. But at that very moment, when they could finally enjoy the first good news of a brutal day, a Ukrainian drone spots something terrible. 2 fighters who were at a position near the village have been taken prisoner.
Look, our guys have no weapons and no body armor, and the ones behind them are Russians.
For Ukrainian soldiers, surrendering is a one-way ticket. Either they would be killed after, or exchange process may be delayed for years, with them being kept in Russian prisons. So once again, the Ukrainians are faced with an impossible decision: to save their own. A heavy lift drone capable of carrying a serious explosive payload is sent up into the sky. Here's what happened next. The Ukrainians wait for the convoy and the prisoners to stop. But everything turns out to be far more complicated than expected.
There's one of ours and a Russian right next to him, and there's the second one of ours.
The whole group is moving together, so the drop timing and the exact release point are calculated with extreme precision.
Don't drop on the signatures. Left to go more left.
The hope is that after the explosion, the Russians will panic, and the Ukrainian prisoners will be able to break away and run. And then comes the moment of truth.
The first 2 runnings, those are Russians. Go, drop it!
The tactic worked. The Russians ran, and the prisoners stayed put. The signatures are still showing warm bodies. But are they alive? Yes.
Look, 2 of ours are walking toward your position. No weapons, no helmets, no gear.
The boys made it out alive. And once again, a small victory in the command post. But real success only comes with a plan. Because playing firefighter on the front line doesn't always work. So the planning for the counterattack is complete. The plan is first laid out for the unit commanders.
Your job is to enter this forest quietly, no contact.
Then the mission is broken down for the fighters themselves.
The entire operation depends on what you do.
Speed and surprise are everything. While the Russian fighters haven't had time to settle into their new positions yet, they need to be cut off from their main units. Before a dangerous mission, regular soldiers usually go quiet and do the same small, simple things. Things that help them get their heads straight. Someone checks their magazine one more time. Someone tightens the straps on their body armor, adjusts their helmet, or checks their radio. These small rituals bring a little order to the chaos that's waiting ahead. In moments like these, people aren't thinking about the big picture. They're thinking about very specific things. Run the route, don't let your buddy down, complete the mission, and come back alive. Let's wish them luck too. And fog. So the rally point is position Perseus. According to Greek mythology, Perseus is famous for beheading Medusa the Gorgon. These guys are going to have to behead the Russian breakthrough. But because of the drones, they can't get to the position by vehicle, so the group covers several kilometers, a few miles, on foot through the forest in the fog.
Some kind of problem with the repeater, so no comms for now. But we have eyes on them from the drone.
No comms, navigating by compass and map. Like it's 100 years ago, the group pushes forward. The fog swallows everything: trees, fields, the outlines of houses. The world shrinks down to just a few meters, maybe 10 feet, in front of your face. And that's how it goes for the full 9 kilometers. Finally, comms come back online. First group is in position.
Beautiful work. Rest up for 20 to 30 minutes.
Once all groups reach their starting positions, the assault begins. A drone spots the first Russian hiding in the bushes. Probably a lookout. A drone strike is cleaner than a burst of automatic fire, because on the front line explosions never stop, so nobody pays attention to them. Whereas the sound of an automatic weapon immediately signals that people are there. Then the bloody work begins. Footage we can't show you due to YouTube's policies. But drop a comment below. Would you want to see more of what's happening on this stretch of the front? The Ukrainian speed and surprise prove decisive. The positions are retaken. Some of the Russians stay in that forest forever, thousands of kilometers from home, and some surrender and are taken prisoner. Of course, the Ukrainians took casualties too, but they are defending their home, and that has no price you can put on it. Tell us in the comments, which moment in this battle hit you the hardest? The artillery call or the drone rescue operation?
This story begins with an assault near Pokrovsk.
One of the main rules for a tanker is hit fast and get out fast.
Russian tankers, not trusting their DIY grill cages, were praying to the angels to help them break through to a key height. But little did they know that a Ukrainian Leopard 2 was already waiting for them on that hilltop, fully loaded with tungsten core darts that can punch through just about anything. But first, the Russian convoy had to squeeze through this bottleneck in a half-destroyed village, and by the laws of the genre, Ukrainian drones were waiting for them. The first tank hit blocks the road for the others. The bottleneck works. The Russians are forced to turn back. At first glance, nothing unusual. Drones have long been the kings of the battlefield. You've probably gotten used to footage like this, but not everything is what it seems. Look closely at the first tank that stopped, the one with the mine plow. It didn't burn after the first hit. It kept standing against wave after wave. Ukrainian FPVs bounce off it like arrows off Achilles' shield. And those that do explode, they're clearly not getting through the armor. According to Russians, this tank took no fewer than 60 hits. Even if that's an exaggeration, the footage alone is insane. And here's the twist. After the battle, the tank remained in the gray zone for a while. Ukrainians never managed to torch it. Later, the Russians pulled it back, and it turned out the tank hadn't stopped because of the drones at all, but because its transmission broke. Look at this machine. Let's call it Achilles' shield. It walked through hell and came back nearly untouched. The improvised armor actually worked. Watch till the end to see how Ukrainians make this beast fall. That Russian command decided to slap the same protection onto more tanks and repeat the mad assault. But before we show you that fight, let's take a closer look at what makes Achilles' shield so special. Hit the like button, because your like is our weapon against YouTube's brutal algorithms. Thanks. First thing that jumps out are the chain dreadlocks. Steel ropes dangling like the fringe of a gypsy wagon. Here's how they work against drones. The FPV's shaped charge warhead detonates far from the actual armor, leaving the tank unharmed. Second, the heavy cage armor wrapped all around. Behind it, you see the core structure, a metal box. And what's stuffed inside that box? Yep, wooden logs. On top, an extra welded steel grill cage. Add to that a beefy 11-channel EW system, thermal imagers, and dual cameras, front and rear. But the craziest part is hidden inside Achilles' shield. You can only get in with a special ladder. Inside, there's even a compartment for infantry, lined with thick metal. And here's the wildest thing. The commander's station is in there too. For safety, the commander sits outside the main tank hull, like some IT guy in a coffee shop, directing the crew via cameras and intercom. Unreal. Well, looks like all the tanks are ready for the assault. Crews are loading ammunition. Now it's just a matter of attaching the mine plow to the lead tank, because every meter of the gray zone has been mined several times by both sides. And now, let's go to the battlefield. Alongside the 4 tanks carrying Achilles' shield rolled in more vehicles with the usual grill cages strapped on top. And behind them, more armored friends. The whole convoy looks like it's headed to a picnic. You can already start feeling sorry for the Russian infantry clinging to their armor. Such parade-style convoys are rare these days, but just the sight of Achilles' shield gave everyone the feeling. This time, we'll break through for sure. Spoiler, no, they will not. Out in the open gray zone, the convoy's speed slowed, because the lead tank with the mine plow couldn't move faster than 10 kilometers per hour. No, you're not looking at the pyramids of Egypt on the horizon. That's Donbass, baby. Its history is a bit like America's Wild West. Here, the Knights of the Wild Steppe, Ukrainian Cossacks, always ruled. Because of the convoy's snail pace and the long distance to Ukrainian lines, the defenders had time to prepare their welcome. A Leopard 2 rolled into position. Let's call him Harvester of Sorrow. Look, the camo makes it almost invisible. And of course, the Russians had no clue they were already walking into the harvest. The Harvester of Sorrow starts carving up the convoy with German precision. The Russians had no idea what was hitting them. Does Achilles' shield save them this time? As you can see, all those improvised add-ons are useless against DM-23A PFSDS rounds. Every shot from Leopard's 120mm cannon lands like a scythe strike. If it doesn't outright kill a tank, it tears all the extra junk clean off. Without Achilles' shield, those tanks are naked in the steppe. And naked, they can be killed by a simple FPV drone. Uncovering these frontline stories takes a massive effort. Support our mission by subscribing to the channel. The Russian formation falls apart. Some try to turn back home, but no, those who veer off the path hit mines. Others fire back, anywhere, just to fire. But it feels like nobody's walking away from today's meat grinder. The accuracy of German tanks is legendary. And honestly, Leopard itself has already become a legend of this war. You'll find several videos on our channel showing how it fights. There's even a video comparing the combat capabilities of the German tank with the American Abrams under real war conditions. So, let's not get sidetracked now. At some point though, hope flickers for the Russians. The Leopard falls silent. Maybe its ammo racks are empty? After all, a standard Leopard 2A4 carries up to 42 rounds. Nobody knows for sure. But Ukrainians had a reliable backup. Artillery was already locked on Russian coordinates. And FPV drones are circling above. So the harvest goes on. It doesn't stop even when the shooting dies down. They say the scariest sound in this war isn't explosions or artillery fire. It's silence. Because silence here is always deceptive. In that silence, you start to hear a thin, nervous buzzing, like a mosquito near your ear. Yeah, that's drones. Writing the new soundtrack of modern war. Their sound cuts your nerves like a razor. Doesn't matter if it's flying at you or not, because that buzz means game over. Attempts to shoot one down with small arms rarely work.
я 300. Что-то в башку осколок попал, я пока по лесополке. Тебя пришел.
Нас разбили. Я выхожу один, Дюс остался там. Все пацаны, это я один, кто вышел. Это посадка. Нас просто... Дюса не могу вытащить.
Even the infantrymen who survived the first strikes and tried to hide in a sparse forest are now doomed to be buried without names. Do they stand a chance of surviving if they make it to nightfall? Maybe, but they can't go back because their commander's order is clear. Push toward Pokrovsk, hole up inside the buildings of the suburban village of Shevchenko, and wait for the next wave of assault troops.
Раненый. Шериф, хочу выбраться, но темно уже. Никто не дает.
That's Russian tactics in action. Stockpiling forces behind Ukrainian lines. Some sit there for weeks, with no water, no food, and then either surrender or die.
Никогда не идите на СВО. Вы попадете в жопу.
And yet some do survive, and set ambushes for Ukrainian soldiers. So by morning, the harvest for the Leopard 2 begins again.
We mostly fire on buildings where drone operators are hiding, infantry, or where weapons and ammo might be stored.
But in dense urban terrain, you can't use artillery or a tank from a closed position. The buildings block the shot. So another Leopard 2 A4 crew pushes into the city to fire the old-fashioned way. Direct fire. In the city, a tank faces just as many enemies. This Leopard 2 A4 is draped with a mesh canopy and ringed with Contact 1 reactive armor. The heavy Leopard stands out against the streets where just yesterday there were shops and apartment blocks. Tense minutes, because from any corner could pop a man with an anti-tank guided missile. And at any moment, a Russian drone with a shaped charge warhead might appear in the sky. And there it is, the panel block building where Russian infantry are holed up. These Soviet-era concrete buildings usually have walls up to 400 millimeters thick, reinforced with steel rods. For most jobs against dug-in infantry and buildings, the go-to round is the DM-11 programmable high explosive shell.
У нас походу гости.
The tank gun becomes a storming squad of its own. Roll up, fire, and the whole floor bursts apart like cardboard. Need to repeat? No problem. The goal is simple: make it easier and safer for the Ukrainian infantry who will come later to finish the clearance. Position destroyed, but the tension doesn't fade. Russian recon already knows there's a Leopard 2 working inside the city. A tank may be fast, but for drones, 20 to 30 kilometers is nothing. Soon the Leo is glowing bright on Russian operators' screens. Hit. Another hit. And again. And again. The fifth drone finally punches through the Leopard's cage armor near the transmission. The engine stalls. The tank halts. On the radio, try starting on emergency. And a miracle. The Leopard roars back to life and crawls away in manual mode. This Leo's got 9 lives just like a cat. Mission complete. The tank makes it back to base under cover. But the war rolls on. In Russian workshops, new cages are welded onto tanks, while Ukrainian Leopards get ready for their next hunt. Show must go on. These barrels, tracks, chunks of armor, transmission blocks, and engine parts could have been turned into roofs for schools and hospitals, or into greenhouses and grain depots. They could have built bridges, ferries, and docks. But for now, they remain here, monuments to a brutal war. These burned-out tanks and APCS hold unique stories, and we're here to uncover them. Subscribe to our channel so we have someone to share them with. Thanks for watching.
If I told you what really happened, you'd say I've watched too many movies.
This story starts near Pokrovsk, where Russian forces managed to breach the defensive line and punch a wedge deep into Ukrainian-controlled Donbass. The guys from the 1st Separate Assault Regiment received a brutally difficult task: to cut off that wedge and stop the enemy from digging in. A dozen people sweat over maps at HQ. Tank crews mount mine rollers, mechanics, up to their elbows in grease, prep the BTR-4 Bucephalus. The assault troops nervously wait for the go-ahead. So, what does a real assault look like? From a battalion commander down to the soldier inside the vehicle? Where does the order end? And where does character take over? The spearhead of this operation is 4 BTR-4Es.
This is an armored vehicle. The official claim is that the frontal armor can withstand a direct hit from a 14.5mm round, while the side armor should handle 12.7mm. The crew consists of 3, the vehicle commander, who can also control the combat module, the driver, and the gunner in the back. Inside, there are 7 seats for troops.
So that's 28 assault soldiers plus the vehicle crews getting ready for a mission that's going to be insanely dangerous. But these Bucephaluses aren't just expected to survive. they're supposed to do serious damage too. How's that going to play out?
Ось це керування тим самим бойовим модулем.
This is the control system for the combat module. What makes this machine special is right here. This thing, the BM7 Peruse combat module. A legend. It's got a 30mm autocannon, a grenade launcher, and it can carry anti-tank guided missiles. And the guys say one of the most helpful tools on board is the PKT, a tank-mounted Kalashnikov machine gun.
While the troops are cleaning their rifles and packing their assault gear, the chief of staff, running on nothing but coffee, goes over every single step of the mission.
Загалом плануємо заїзд.
The plan is to go in with 4 Bucephaloses and 2 tanks. First, one tank moves separately along this route to carry out a distraction. Its job is to pull enemy attention entirely onto itself. After that, the second tank joins the column with the BTRS. Its task is to hit a specific basement where enemy forces are dug in.
Now, the assault groups are receiving their orders. And you've got a mission too. Hit that like button to support stories like this.
Each BTR has its own task for deploying infantry, and each follows its own route with decoy actions along the way. Every drop-off point must be covered by fire from the 30mm cannon and the PKT machine gun, and the deployment has to happen as fast as possible. After that, the BTR moves on, about 1.5 kilometers, to the next assigned location. At that stage, our regimental artillery kicks in with smoke. Our vampires deploy smoke screens. Plus, one soldier from the BTR tosses smoke out of the hatch to simulate a drop-off at that spot too.
But even the mission itself is a huge risk, for both command and infantry. Any mechanized assault in a convoy is a sitting duck for the enemy. And before the troops even reach the landing point, drones are already in the sky, artillery is getting dialed in, and the kill zone is heating up. And it gets worse. Even before facing the full firepower of the Russians, the troops are already hitting roadblocks. Literally. Commanders have to improvise. The tank crews ran into something they absolutely did not expect.
They're saying there are mines on the road, but we already flew drones over it. There was nothing.
That kind of surprise could have wrecked the entire mission. Luckily, the tankers had installed mine rollers just in case.
We rolled forward and then, boom, the first blast goes off. I look, one of the rollers flew off. We kept moving. Second explosion, then a third. We stopped. I called the commander. Here's what's going on. He says, "Can you keep going?" I say, "Well, technically, yes." We pressed on, cut the corner, tried to rejoin the road, and hit another mine. I radioed in, "This section's mined too. We've already lost 2 rollers." The commander said, "Pull back." That setup we'd rigged for mine clearing. It was damaged. If we had kept going, we'd be picking up mines with our tracks or belly plate. These are magnetic mines.
So, just like that, the tanks are out of the game. But right behind them is the column of BTRS, heading straight for that same mined road. Commanders make a call on the fly.
BTRS, all BTRS, listen up. Before the intersection, veer off, cut across the field. I saw the first and second crews had already peeled off and were driving through fields. And we're like, whatever, we'll stick to the road. We're brave guys, real tough guys. Yeah, but hey, all went well.
They made it through the mined stretch. But the next obstacle was no better: sand. The ground ahead was soft and hard to navigate for wheeled vehicles. That's where Bucephalus started to show weakness. Same as any armored car on that kind of terrain. Don't forget to subscribe to learn more about the vehicles fighting on Ukraine's side.
This BTR wasn't exactly built for sand. The vehicle started bogging down. We had to lock all the diffs and engage every axle just to keep moving. I managed to push through. But the fourth crew, who were behind us, told me later. They almost rear-ended us. He said, "You finally moved, man, and thank God, because I was stuck and nearly on your tail. As soon as you got going, I threw it into full drive, rocked it back and forth, and crawled out."
But the sand was just the warm-up. That brief delay gave the Russians enough time to bring in more FPV drones to the BTR route. And the column started taking hits.
Oh, direct hit on the lead vehicle. First one just got hit. Before we could even drop off the infantry, boom, we got hit. Smoke filled the cabin. Nasty smell everywhere. Honestly, I thought the tire caught fire or something. It smelled like burning rubber. Tolian asked me, "Are we on fire?" I said, "Nah, just smoking." We kept going. Got hit again. And again. After the 5th strike, I stopped counting. When we finally halted to unload the infantry, Another powerful strike landed. Coolant started leaking across the windshield. Our driver goes, "We're done. We're not going anywhere." I told him, "If we don't move, we're gonna catch hell from command."
Despite the multiple hits, the first BTR completed its mission. Armor and added protection did their job, but the crew of the second BTR had an even harder fate waiting.
The second team dropped troops at their point, started heading home, and took a critical hit.
At this point, the command post could do little except bark updates over the radio. It was now down to the crew's survival skills. The mission turned from assault to escape. What played out next was a front row seat to a soldier's worst day.
We dropped the infantry. On our way back, my BTR just stopped.
Назад, блядь, давай, давай, на всех парах, пошел, блядь!
The BTR, driven by a mechanic with the call sign Sailor, was hit by a wave of FPV drones. One of the hits completely disabled the vehicle. The crew had no choice but to abandon it.
We know one crew member, a sapper tasked with launching smoke during the drop-off, was likely killed. Another, the gunner, is currently listed as missing. No contact, no sightings, he just disappeared. The driver, he's still out there with the infantry, holding the line. I dismount, and now I'm a rifleman, an assault trooper. But honestly, I'd rather be inside armor, even if that armor's gone. The BTR came to a stop in the middle of a field, and between that field and the Ukrainian position where our guys were holding ground, he still had about 800 meters to cross. While I was moving from the vehicle to the tree line, it felt like a Hollywood war movie. First, something was dropped right on me, wounded me. Then I kept moving, and an FPV drone came in, hit my legs. The earlier drop injured my hands. I kept pushing forward. Then, from the other side of a tank ditch, small arms fire opened up. I dropped into the grass and weeds and just laid there. I could hear the bullets zipping by. Phew, phew, phew. I thought, Sailor, is this where it ends? Will this field be your grave and you go missing forever? But I told myself, no, this can't be it.
Sailor's story didn't end there. In fact, what happened next could rival any Hollywood action flick. Wounded, bleeding, and alone, Sailor made it to friendly positions. But evacuation wasn't possible, so instead, he fought. Despite his injuries, he helped repel multiple Russian counterattacks side by side with infantry. And this didn't go on for a few hours. Not a day. He held out for 2 whole weeks.
Shrapnel here, here, and here. I dug them out myself with a stick, wrapped up the wounds best I could. I was already in a dugout by then.
There was no time to rest or recover. The enemy was already tightening the noose. Russians were trying to push through again and again, but they paid for it.
I'll tell you straight. A Russian comes at me, I light him up. Bang, bang, bang. He drops. I guess their command knew we were there, but they didn't tell the troops. One guy shouts to me, "Brother, I'm Russian. I'm one of yours." I pop out and unload maybe 10 rounds at him. I just said, "Yeah, sure, one of ours."
Despite the chaos, the pain, and the losses, the mission was a success. Ukraine managed to cut off Russian logistics in this sector and complicate their tactical position. The BTR assault, supported by bomber drones and coordinated infantry drops, proved effective, even with the setbacks. Command made the right calls under pressure. Infantry deployed at the correct drop zones without a single loss. As for Sailor, after holding the line for 2 weeks, he was finally evacuated and handed over to medics. For his bravery and professionalism, he was nominated for a state award.
Sailor accomplished an extremely difficult task. He stayed loyal to the mission until the end, loyal to his comrades. He will be recognized with a national award, and there are many more like him, whose stories haven't yet been told. But they too will be nominated for honors for this operation.
This is just one episode among countless others happening every day on the battlefields of the Russo-Ukrainian War. Most of them never make it to the screen, but Ukraine holds the line and keeps fighting. And we'll keep showing you what that fight looks like. Thank you for watching.
100 Russian tanks and APCs burned on a tiny patch of land near Dobropilia. That stretch of Ukrainian soil is now known as the Green Mile. The assault starts in typical fashion with an intense artillery barrage. But it's not the shelling that surprises the Ukrainian units holding the line. The twist this time is the use of a new type of assault tank, the Shaggy tanks. They're nearly impossible to destroy, and they're built so that the extra armor doesn't interfere with turret rotation. You're about to see this design in action. They advance toward Ukrainian positions in small groups of 3 to 5 tanks from different directions. At first glance, especially through drone footage, they look like regular tanks with cages, the kind you've seen in our earlier videos, but they're not. So what makes a Shaggy tank different? There's no special troop capsule or ramp, because these aren't made to transport infantry. They are the assault element, capable of operating solo or in a convoy. Before we show whether Ukrainian forces managed to stop the Shaggy tanks, hit like and subscribe. Otherwise, YouTube's algorithm won't show this to others who need to see it. Ukrainian drone operators engage the convoy. But the drones either fall near the Shaggy tanks due to EW interference, or their shaped charges fail to penetrate the armor because of the hundreds of metal rods sticking out and the dreadlocks of chains and cables hanging everywhere. That's exactly why Shaggy tanks aren't afraid of drones. Their job is the opposite, to attract as many Ukrainian drones as possible, while pushing forward with a mine roller and breaching dense Ukrainian defenses so other vehicles can pass through. So what do the Ukrainians do? First, artillery comes into play, but hitting a moving tank is extremely difficult. Still, the first Shaggy tank gets hit. But finishing it off takes a whole swarm of drones. Another Shaggy tank is taken out, and again, it takes dozens of drones to burn through the armor. Another convoy gets stuck at a natural obstacle, and the Shaggy tanks along with other vehicles become perfect targets for drones. It looks like the heavy cage structure reduces mobility so badly, even a small puddle becomes an obstacle. The crews of the tanks that got stuck and the infantry riding in the BTRs scatter and hide in the tree line. Ukrainian drone operators are forced to waste time tracking them down and finishing them off. While this massacre is still unfolding, leave a comment. Do you agree that these massive cages are a mistake, making tanks too heavy and killing their maneuverability? Just got hit! But look, while we and Ukrainian drones were chasing Russians through the woods, the first Shaggy tank managed to break into the village. Drones don't scare it. They explode, but barely scratch it. The Shaggy tank opens fire on Ukrainian positions using direct aim. It might seem like a slow and clumsy machine, but underneath all that armor is a T-80 BVM. Its gunner sees targets like he's watching TV, a stabilized sighting system, thermal imaging, laser rangefinder, all giving a clear picture even through dust or darkness. The ballistic computer adjusts the shot in seconds. Add an autoloader to the mix. The Shaggy tank can fire 6 to 8 rounds per minute, instantly switching targets. For anyone hiding in bunkers or concrete shelters, this means one thing: the shelter stops being a shelter. It just finked us, but we got lucky. So far, the Russian plan seems to be working. Shaggy tanks are pushing through minefields not only on roads, but across open fields. Right behind them, armored convoys with standard cages burst into the gray zone, carrying infantry. The convoys come in fast and from multiple directions. Dozens of Ukrainian drones, waiting for them in the sky. Bearing 260, course 2, fire. If not for the Kropiva system, Ukrainian artillery and drones simply wouldn't be able to keep up with Russian movements. Kropiva is the brain of Ukrainian artillery. It's not a corporate product. It was built by soldiers and volunteers. At its core is a map that updates target coordinates in real time. The gunner sees the target, the commander gives the order. Kropiva calculates everything, and within seconds the shell is on its way. What used to take minutes now takes seconds. The Green Mile is turning into a boiling cauldron. But there are just too many targets, so part of one convoy reaches the village and manages to unload infantry before being destroyed. The drones are doing their job, but they need backup on the ground. 2 Ukrainian tanks are sent in to clear the village. They literally demolish the houses where Russians are holed up. But it's not just Ukrainian drones circling above the Green Mile. The tanks do their job fast and roll back just as fast. Meanwhile, what's left of a second Russian convoy breaks through the Green Mile and reaches the outskirts of Mirnograd. The name of this city literally means peaceful town. But a few Russian APCs carrying assault troops break through to the residential areas on the eastern side, and the name quickly loses its meaning. They pushed in too deep. There's hardly a chance for any of them to survive. Still, the Russian command sees this whole operation, launched by the Shaggy tanks, as a success. So they send in light infantry next, riding motorbikes and trucks. If you don't follow orders, if you refuse your missions, I swear on my mother and my children, I'll personally shoot each and every one of you. You're all in this now. You animals. All of you. Except that one man. The rest, animals. Their task, to blaze through the Green Mile and hold the village. They race through fire and smoke from burning vehicles. In the brush along the road, their wounded comrades lie screaming for help. The dead stay silent. But the silence of the dead is louder than the roar of motorcycle engines. So every one of them knows what's waiting ahead. YouTube doesn't allow us to show all the footage from this assault. And we have to be selective with what we show from the aftermath. But you already know what happened here. I can't get across the open. They're all breaded. A small group of light infantry actually makes it. Not everything can be done with drones. so the clearing is carried out by Ukrainian special forces. House by house. As you can see, every Ukrainian house has its own war story. And while that clearing operation continues, a fresh batch of Russians is being sent to the front. In the workshops near the front lines, new grill cage models are being built. There's still no better protection from drones. Ukrainian fighters say this war changes every single day. You can feel it even after just a week's leave. Each day brings a new invention and a new tragedy. Subscribe and watch history being rewritten in real time.
This is the bridge over the canal. Right here is where the key events of this video will unfold, though the person filming has no idea. We hope he made it out alive. But take a close look at the concrete wall on the left and those buildings on the right. Later, everything changed. This is what that same street looked like after 300 days of fighting. And this is after 500 days. This is Chasiv Yar, Ukraine. It's smaller than Disneyland. By the time you're watching this video, the city has been under shelling for over 600 days. Drowned in smoke, no silence, no rest. Street battles are still raging. Before you watch one of the most intense moments from the battle for Chasiv Yar, let's briefly explain why this city matters, both for Ukraine and Russia. You'll also understand why this fight is so vicious. After the fall of Bakhmut, Chasiv Yar became the next target for Russian forces. The straight line distance between the two cities is only 3.5 to 4 kilometers. But there's no such thing as a straight line in war. Chasiv Yar sits on higher ground, the highest elevation along the entire front line, which means all approaches to it go through lowlands. This gives defenders a clear advantage and makes it far harder for attackers to advance. That's why, on this tiny patch of land, Russian losses have already reached about 99,000 troops, according to Forbes estimates. The roads into the city became bottlenecks for Russian armor. Tanks and APCs were torched here by the dozens. But the main obstacle isn't the elevation. It's the canal that cuts through the city and its outskirts. And this isn't just any canal. It's a monster with 3 deadly forms. One section is an open water channel. Another is a subterranean pipeline. And the third consists of massive pipes laid directly across the open steppe. Trying to advance across the open steppe on foot, Russian troops used the water pipes as cover, grouping in clusters of 5 to 10 soldiers. From there, they slipped into the city in small groups, regrouping at predetermined spots where others were already waiting. This is how they built assault platoons of 20 to 30 troops. And at those rendezvous points, Ukrainians were already waiting. Sometimes all the Russians had time for was to raise a flag, just so their commanders could report successful offensive actions up the chain. Brutal firefights broke out over every building, every yard, at times just inches apart. But Russian logistics were a disaster. Without proper resupply or evacuation, their infantry was chewed up fast. And movement through the city got even harder, thanks to Ukrainian drones. Within just a few weeks, there were more drones in the sky than people on the ground. FPVs, quadcopters, hexacopters. The sky was packed with them. Anyone who showed their face on the street became a target. even wearing anti-drone cloaks, even at night. Eventually, even the massive pipes stopped being reliable cover. So the Russians started digging. Little burrows carved by hand. Small shelters for 1 to 5 people. But even those couldn't guarantee survival. With no supply runs, no rotations, and no way to evacuate the wounded, they couldn't turn the tide of the battle, no matter how high the losses climbed. That's why, by late January, the Russians gambled on a risky move. They blew up sections of the pipeline to create openings and stormed into the city mounted on armor. And this is where our main story begins. Before it kicks off, please subscribe to our channel and hit that like button, because in just a moment, we won't have time to remind you. YouTube's algorithm can be a brutal battlefield too. Thanks for understanding. So here we are, fog, low clouds, and what the soldiers call Syriac, the perfect conditions for an assault. That's why Ukrainian drones only spot the breakthrough after the Russians are already inside the city. Within minutes, FPV drones take to the skies. Moments later, Ukrainian artillery joins in. Some of the Russian airborne infantry fighting vehicles are hit, some disabled. The fight is on. Still, some Russian troops manage to land, spread out, and take up positions. Ukrainians respond quickly, but poor weather makes drone strikes tricky. So, after about an hour and a half, a tank is sent into the landing zone. It creeps forward through the streets, as empty and silent as the halls of an abandoned building. And here it is. That same street. The one that will never be the same again. If not for the bad weather, this mission would have been suicide. But the same fog that grounds Ukrainian FPVs also blinds Russian reconnaissance drones, which guide their artillery. That doesn't mean the crew is safe. Elite Russian assault troops were thrown into the Chasiv Yar offensive. And they include plenty of desperate guys, the kind who'll stand up tall with an RPG and go for that one lucky shot. A direct hit, and a lone tank without infantry cover is toast. That's why Ukrainian tankers move carefully and methodically. AT-72 typically carries 44 shells, split charge rounds. Only 22 of those are loaded into the autoloader. It can fire 8 to 10 rounds per minute, but you've got to ration those shots, or you'll find yourself stuck reloading at the worst moment. Between gunshots, the 7.62mm PKT machine gun keeps pressure on the enemy. And under that kind of hot lead, survival is rare. Here's the drop zone. A wrecked Russian IFV still smoking nearby. A few more shots ring out, and then comes the order to pull back. Shot number 16. Still some ammo left. The tank carefully reverses, never turning its vulnerable rear to the enemy. Reverse speed on a T-72, only about 5.5 kilometers per hour. That's just over 3 miles per hour. But better slow and alive than fast and dead. Mission complete. But intel reports surviving paratroopers regrouping in another building. Luckily, the weather is still garbage for drones the next day. So the tank returns for a repeat. $19. 20. 21. Looks like the crew's more confident this time. 22. That'll do. Time to head back. But hey, God loves a trilogy, right? So yeah, the tank heads out again. This time, as the undisputed boss of Chasiv Yar. The guys who became tankers probably dreamed of steel duels and tank-on-tank glory. Instead, they're doing the dirty work. Because tanks were never meant to be roving howitzers. But were the Ukrainians expected this time? Shit just got real. Watch closely. After the 10th shot, an enemy FPV slams into the turret. That means another will follow, and then another, and then another. Time to pull out. You've seen what a swarm of angry FPV drones loaded with shaped charges can do to a tank, right? If not, check out our video how Ukrainian Leopard ambushes Russian convoy but runs out of shells. And if you want more like this, subscribe to our channel. You can have dozens of tanks, hundreds of armored vehicles, but none of it means anything without a guy with a rifle holding the line. Next day, the Ukrainian tank rolls forward again. This time, it's joined by an American M13 and a rare M80 from the former Yugoslavia. Their engines hum like echoes from the past. Inside the APCs, Ukrainian infantry. With a tank nearby, they feel safer. Its armor is a wall. Its cannon is a sledgehammer. A tank isn't a guarantee of survival, but it does remind you that you're not alone. If you've got a buddy, send this video to him. Let him know he's not alone either. And drop us a comment. What stood out, what didn't, what hit hardest. Thanks for watching.
We were flying parallel to the border, just 3 to 4 kilometers away. Everything was fine until a missile launched from Russian territory. The plane split in two. What saved me was the armored cockpit capsule.
The Su-25 is tough, like an old soldier. Built for war, not parades. But the harsh truth is, Su-25s fly dangerously low, and that makes them easy targets.
There's no such thing as a mission without enemy fire, either from aircraft or from the ground. We're constantly maneuvering. We're always playing tag.
As Su-25 pilots like to joke, if enemy air defenses aren't shooting at you, you're probably doing something wrong. And when you lose this deadly game of tag, the last thing you can do is pull the lever and eject. But even then, your fight's just beginning.
As ground attack pilots, we can't afford to get captured. We know exactly what could happen to us.
That's why a pistol can be the difference between survival and capture.
Ever since I got shot down, I always carry not one, but 2 pistols, 1 Makarov and 1 APS.
But this pilot's story proves, getting shot down and landing in enemy territory isn't even the worst thing that can happen in war. So what is? You're about to find out. Let's start with how he survived the initial hit. The Su-25's armored frame does offer real protection, but it's no match for a Russian Panzer S-1 surface-to-air missile. The missile struck. The aircraft went out of control. The Ukrainian pilot pulled the levers and ejected. By that time, he had already served nearly 20 years in tactical aviation, but nothing could prepare him for this. In emergency ejection mode, the parachute opens immediately. So from 5,200 meters, his descent took 1,040 seconds. That's nearly 17 minutes in the air, floating over enemy territory.
They started firing at me from the ground with a DSHK. I saw him. I even saw the Panzer that hit me.
Local villagers witnessed the entire drama with their own eyes. The full-scale invasion hadn't started yet, so they didn't understand what they were seeing. But despite the intense ground fire, the pilot landed uninjured. He quickly ditched his chute and slipped into the nearby woods, moments before a Russian search team reached the crash site.
They were close, several times. I saw them, but they never spotted me.
He spent several days surrounded by the enemy. Only on day 6 was he rescued by a Ukrainian special operations team. The details of that mission will never be revealed, because they'd expose Ukrainian SOF tactics. But what we do know, the rescue was anything but easy. By then, the pilot had just 3 bullets left. That's why he now flies with 2 sidearms, always. You might think this is where the story ends, but it's only the beginning. When Russia launched its full-scale invasion, the pilot was already a colonel and a senior flight inspector. And on day 1 of the war, he wasn't alone. He was with his son, who, on February 24th, flew his first combat mission. Before we tell you what happened next, hit the like button and subscribe. Your support helps us reach more people and keeps our team motivated to bring you these untold frontline stories. Thank you. Part 2, Father, Son, and the Su-25. The war began with missile strikes on Ukrainian air bases. The father, our colonel, was home, but his son?
My son ended up in hell, and I could only watch. From the other side of the city, I saw the airbase being bombed. I knew how to evade an airstrike, in theory. My son did it, for real.
It's important to note, no one can force a pilot into the air without the proper clearance for night flights in difficult weather. And the night of February 24th, 2022, it was exactly that. Pitch dark, low visibility, missiles exploding all around, and the runway itself was torn apart. You're now seeing the aftermath of that missile strike. But somehow, they pulled it off. The mission to save the jets succeeded. No one died. Every pilot made it out alive.
That day, my son stopped being just a boy. He stopped being just a serviceman and became a warrior.
From that moment, war became routine. The Su-25 isn't sleek or stealthy. It's not glamorous. It's a flying tank, a legend of ground attack aviation. When it swoops in low and rips across enemy trenches, Ukrainian infantry feels hope. Russian infantry? They feel terror.
The Su-25 showed it's capable of way more than what's written in the manual.
In the early days of the war, when front lines were shifting fast, Su-25s struck trenches, dugouts, bunkers, armored vehicles, and enemy infantry. Beyond close air support, Ukrainian Su-25s also hit fuel convoys, ammo depots, field supply columns, and vehicles on the move. Didn't have combat clearance. Why? Because he was training new pilots, getting them ready, and sending them forward while preparing the next group. And let's be honest, training combat aviators is no less important than fighting. That's why Command refused to send him into battle. Still, for this man, it wasn't enough.
I had to push through the chain of command just to get deployed. I couldn't accept sitting in the rear while my son was out there fighting.
What would you do in his place? Drop your answer in the comments. Eventually, he got the clearance. And when he did, the father began flying in the same squadron as his son. By then, his son had already been honored. He had destroyed over 20 Russian tanks, more than 50 armored fighting vehicles, 55 transport trucks, 20 fuel tankers, and hundreds of Russian soldiers and officers. That's not a typical father-son story. This isn't LeBron and Bronny. This is war. But even so, They never flew in the same formation. And that makes sense. Because what if one of them gets shot down? How does the other keep going?
I got to fly and fight alongside my son for 11 days. After that, he was gone.
A pilot's family isn't like others. Their kids don't become businessmen or bureaucrats. They become aviators. They learn to say goodbye from a young age. It's not just a choice, it's fate. Still, even with that mindset, losing a pilot is always a tragedy. It leaves a permanent wound in the hearts of those who survive. For a few minutes, they hoped maybe he ejected, maybe he lived. But then came the footage.
This is the video of him being shot down. That's how he died.
The video shows a Ukrainian Su-25 flying dangerously low, just above the treetops. Below him, the enemy. In their hands, a small, deadly man-portable air defense system. It tracks heat. It flies fast, like a bullet, and it's coming for the engine. The pilot never sees where the shot came from. There's no warning, just a split second. Maybe 2, maybe 5. Even if he pulls the handle. Ejecting at such low altitude doesn't guarantee survival. The parachute doesn't have time to open. The pilot hits the ground and doesn't make it. Part 3. A different war. After his son was killed, the father went into mourning, but 40 days later, he returned to duty. Before every flight, he visits his son's grave, asking for a blessing and angelic protection. He believes his son is still with him, watching over him from above. He's still flying. But now, it's a different war, not the one he knew in 2022.
Right now, the war is completely different. It's incredibly tough. Multiple layers of enemy air defense, enemy aircraft. Every mission, it feels like a one-way flight.
The Su-25, while still a symbol of battlefield resilience, has serious limitations, especially in modern high-tech warfare. Most of Ukraine's Su-25 fleet dates back to the 1980s and 1990s. Some even flew in the Soviet war in Afghanistan. Let that sink in. The aircraft lacks its own radar, meaning pilots have zero awareness of nearby enemy fighters. And the standard weapons loadout? Classic Soviet-era ground attack gear, Kh-25 guided missiles, with a range of just 10 kilometers. Unguided rockets, unguided bombs. Most of these munitions are nearly depleted. Even the American-supplied Zuni rockets, while appreciated, were developed in the 1950s, hardly cutting edge. But now, that's changing.
Thanks to our partners, we now have highly accurate weapons. If we need to drop 250 kilograms of explosives into a window, we can. And we do it effectively.
What's he talking about? There is now visual proof that Ukrainian Su-25s have been integrated with French AASM hammer munitions. The hammer isn't a bomb itself, it's a modular guidance kit. You attach it to a standard high-explosive bomb, and now you've got a precision-guided weapon. It can hit targets with extreme accuracy, even in poor weather and from standoff range, far outside enemy air defense zones. To launch it, the Su-25 needs to pitch its nose up at the correct angle. So pilots approach the target at low altitude, then pull up and release the bomb during the climb. Thanks to AASM hammer, the work of Ukraine's Su-25 pilots has become more effective and far safer. But even the best weapon is worthless without the will to use it. And the greatest asset in Ukraine's Su-25 fleet is its pilots. Like the man in this story, despite his age, despite the pain, he's still flying, now fighting for two.
Little boy, thank you. Thank you for bringing me back. I saved you, and you saved me. Thank you.
This video is different from what we usually post. If you liked the format, tell us in the comments. If not, tell us why. Your feedback truly matters. Thanks for watching.
One look at these Marder cannon rounds, and the enemy might have decided the battle wasn't worth showing up for. With the anti-drone protection mounted, the German IFV looks weird. But this is pure German power, and right now you're watching the beginning of its mission. Will this protection save the Marder? Will the crew have enough ammo? Here they absolutely believe humans have a sixth sense, an instinct that warns you about what's coming, but you don't have to guess anything, because you're about to see it all with your own eyes.
Все, я готов. Все, погнали.
The sky is overcast, the sun is nowhere to be seen, but it's exactly this kind of weather that gives the Marder crew their best chance. That's why the Ukrainians decide to make this push. A Humvee is also part of the mission. Past that arch begins the gray zone, where the straight road isn't always the shortest one. They're being guided like a shepherd guiding a herd. Only the shepherd is their own UAV. The Humvee follows behind for now.
Костян, я Ярий, на зв'язок, прийом.
But it seems the connection is lost. The crew isn't responding. Most likely Russian EW is jamming them, but there's hope the EW is blocking only one direction of the signal. A normal situation in war, so the mission continues.
Костян, я Ярий, якщо мене чуєш, зараз буде, получається, 50 метрів і поворот наліво.
Oops, but the Marder turns right. Is the connection fully gone? Fortunately, no. Even though the thin, crunchy snow hasn't yet turned into dirty slush, the ice is unforgiving, and it becomes the first real test for the German IFV.
Костян, давай задки, и впереди тебя сейчас будет техтехаммер, и за ним прием.
The Marder's tracks handle light off-road terrain pretty well, but they're helpless against ice. Damn, which genius came up with these rubber inserts? But look, the Marder is already closing in on enemy positions, so to stay focused on the mission, we'll return to its tracks later. But there is time for you to subscribe to this channel. Hit it, because your subscription hits the YouTube algorithm like a shot of adrenaline.
Едь прямо!
Because of the tension, the gunner started a bit early. It happens, and far worse things happen too. But while the Humvee covers the withdrawal, the Marder pushes several dozen meters farther forward. There it is, the edge of the tree line where they need to open up. The automatic 20mm Mk20 cannon literally cuts a chunk out of the forest, 880 rounds per minute. That's not your gentle boom boom. Inside, everything vibrates like the Marder is about to lift off the ground.
У нас еще есть трохи времени, хотя бы 5 минут или 3, чтобы его вывести, и будет все хорошо.
The cannon's ammo load is only 1,250 rounds, so the gunner's work ends quickly. But this isn't even half the mission, because everything around them is mined.
Костик, иди по своим следам.
The 20mm Rheinmetall cannon isn't the Marder's only weapon. It also has a coaxial 7.62mm MG3 with a giant ammo reserve, 5,000 rounds. But the commander ordered the MG3 to be used only on the way back, if absolutely needed. You never want to return completely empty, because from behind any tree or any ruined wall, a desperate RPG gunner can jump out.
Сука, пидор. Прикинь. Баба-Яга. Хлопцы, вы видите, Баба-Яга над ним висит?
Bad news. Baba Yaga is a type of UAV that can have 6 motors and lift up to 15 kilograms of explosives. Baba Yaga always appears out of nowhere and keeps striking until it kills. But the Marder crew gets lucky. This Baba Yaga is already empty, see? So the crew keeps moving. But after a few more kilometers, the Marder still takes a hit.
Його в'їбали.
But no. The vehicle is intact, though it looks like the transmission or the engine took damage, because the Marder is standing in the middle of an intersection like a Christmas tree in the town square. That is very dangerous. But finally the engine fires up. The Marder keeps moving. Most likely, the operator of the Russian Baba Yaga UAV passed the Marder's coordinates to his colleagues, and they managed to catch up with the IFV just before it exited the gray zone. But the Marder survived the strike, and with a damaged triplex, it returns to base late in the evening.
Это хорошо. Генералы теперь будут разматы.
Да.
Паша скажет, все равно напороли.
Maybe there were some mistakes, but we're not generals. And if you are a general, drop a comment and tell us what you think about this mission. And if you're not a general yet, just hit like and keep watching, because this isn't even the hottest Marder mission of the day. In these rare frames, a Marder goes into the assault together with a Bradley and a Striker. Who's the odd one out here? Probably the Striker. It's a wheeled APC, so its protection is much lighter. On top of that, the 12.7mm M2 Browning machine gun used on the Ukrainian Striker is no match for the Marder's 20mm cannon or the Bradley's 25mm Bushmaster cannon, so the Striker is the first to drop out of the fight. After a drone strike, it turns away. One tumbled overboard, and then there were two. Bradley and Marder split up to make the job harder for the Russian operators and keep pushing the assault. Just a few minutes later, a drone hits the Marder. Russian operators clearly picked it as the second target. The German armor holds the hit, and the vehicle heads for the forest for cover under the trees. But even there, another drone arrives. At this moment, the Bradley keeps executing the mission, firing non-stop and closing in on Russian positions. But a drone catches up with it too, and then a second one. But the Bradley crew manages to get into the woods under tree cover. What happens next? Another Marder enters the fight. Ukrainian commanders decided to complete the mission and support their comrades. And we consider this final assault the most spontaneous attack of this entire war. Look, it rushes into battle even without a grill, relying only on its EW. Inside are fighters reinforcing the German armor with their own prayers. And it clearly works. The first drone flies past. Then two anti-tank missiles also miss. The Marder pours lead generously on enemy positions. Two more missiles miss, and another drone overshoots, dropping like a sick bird just a few meters away. And there they are, the enemy trenches. That's it, job done. Now it's the assault troops' turn to clear the trenches. A few meters of territory are retaken, several Russian soldiers are killed, and several surrender. Well, luck favors the bold. But victory comes to those who bring along a very specific teammate, a tank. These are the frames of the brightest Marder mission in Ukraine. This may be the peak of the old German IFV's career. So first on stage is the tank. Its cannon roars so hard that the walls of the building where the Russians are hiding shake and crumble into dust. A few more shots, and even the Ukrainian drone operators watching this scene are shocked. Now the little one charges into battle, the Marder with infantry inside. First, it smashes the corner of the building so it doesn't take a shot in the back. Then it breaks through the first fence, then the second fence, and bursts onto the target's territory. Within seconds, the Ukrainian IFV is right next to the main building and drops off the troops. The job is done. Now the infantry has the slow, precise work of clearing the area. Despite its age, the Marder doesn't look like some worn-out relic that has already lived its life. Ukraine received around 200 Marder IFVs, used mostly by the Marine Corps and the air assault units. Most of them are the 1A3 modification introduced in the late 1980s. Many have been lost in brutal battles. But the Marder still fights, still shoots, still breaks through, and still saves infantry, proving that old age is not a verdict. On the contrary, its forged solid German armor still takes hits from FPV drones and shrapnel strikes with dignity, giving the crew a chance to survive in situations where lighter vehicles turn into scrap metal. And the main thing, the combination of the 20mm cannon and the MG3 machine gun remains one of the most balanced tandems on the battlefield. You've just seen it yourself. Blood, mud, and explosions don't stop women from fighting shoulder to shoulder with men. How do they handle heavy gear? Do they bring the heat driving tanks and fighting fearlessly on the front? Watch this.
I remember that morning in detail. She said, "Honey, I'm off to war." And I didn't even process it. I just went, "Okay, grab me a beer on your way back." Jesus, I was such an idiot. If I had known what was waiting for her.
Right now, Miss Tetiana is inside the cramped metal belly of a howitzer, where there is no room for jokes. Heavy work is underway. Here she isn't just a woman, she is a gunner, part of the team, and while the powder gases dissipate, her voice rings out louder than the noise of the shots. Is this really not a movie? Is this girl really baking enemy hardware instead of pastries?
They send us visual confirmation of our work, and also voice reports like this. This is the result for one day of our 2 S1 Gvozdika.
But you know, the main difficulties for a woman on the front, it's not the combat work at all, but everything around it. For example, this heavy thing here, it's the breech wedge of a 122mm howitzer. It ensures the locking of the bore before the shot and the ejection of the casing after it. During technical maintenance, cleaning, or parking the SPG, the breech wedge is always removed. The gunner walks to work with it like a schoolboy with a backpack to school. You can't lose the wedge, otherwise you'll end up in the brig. So how much does this thing weigh?
36 kilograms, that's 20 kilograms lighter than me.
May Saint Barbara, the patron saint of artillery, protect her, and may her ammo load never run out. Hit like if you are also impressed by this woman. However, Miss Tetiana is not the only woman on the front dealing with heavy hardware.
I'm 48 years old. Right now, I'm a tank gunner, but I'm undergoing training to become a tank commander. Yeah, there are plenty of professions in the military, but heavy machinery just suits me better.
However, these women are still going through combat coordination. But are there women who are already fighting as tank or IFV crew commanders? Yes, we found them. And these girls are incredible.
My spot in the turret is right here on the right. That's the commander's station. The gunner operator sits on the left.
She is a Bradley YFV commander with the call sign Magura. From the very first day of the war, she wanted to be in a combat unit. Finally, they took her in as a combat medic. But 6 months later, the commander started trying to keep her safe. She filed a formal refusal of duties because she wanted to fight. That's when they took her on as a Bradley IFV commander. And the turbulent life began. Assaults, attacks, rotations, medevacs, until something heavy slammed into her Bradley. Comms went dead, the instruments went dark, a fire started, and the hatch jammed. It's that feeling like you're alive, but really, you're already gone.
That was probably the most terrifying moment because contact with the enemy, getting wounded, whatever, all the things you expect aren't that scary. What's scary is when something happens that you didn't see coming.
Luckily, she managed to get out through the gunner's hatch. The story of this girl and her heavy IFV continues. But now, meet the girl commanding the heaviest hardware of this war. Brittany, call sign Captain, is a former servicewoman of the Canadian Armed Forces. She served as a Leopard 2 crew commander.
At first, I was training Ukrainian tankers on Leopard tanks, but I couldn't stay on the sidelines, so I came to the war to do more than just training.
The first phrases she learned were, "Good day," "Load up," and the ones that are banned on YouTube. But in a year, Brittany mastered more than just soldier slang and speaking Ukrainian. Imagine this, she mastered the T-80 tank. So, how does it feel after the Leopard 2?
Canadian propaganda constantly repeats that Leopards, Abrams, and Challengers are the best in the world and that the T-Series is shit. I was very surprised because the T-80 is actually a really good tank.
Wow, that's a Russian tank. How did it end up in Brittany's hands? Actually, at the start of the war, Ukrainian army had about 90 to 100 units of various T-80 modifications in service. But as the war went on, their numbers increased. In just the first year of the full-scale invasion, Ukraine captured hundreds of different armored vehicles, a significant part of which were successfully put into service. We have a video on the channel where Ukrainian soldiers tell the harsh truth about trophy hardware, so we won't dwell on this in detail and we'll move on. Ms. Brittany, what surprises you about the Ukrainian army?
It's not discipline. In the Canadian army, discipline is strict. You can't even keep your hands in your pockets. Besides, the training is less heavy here and you can wear non-standard gear. Any patches, more comfortable clothes.
Comfortable clothes at war. That's not about style and not about comfort for comfort's sake. The uniform has to work together with the body, not against it. Not chafing under armor, not pressing where you need to breathe, not getting in the way of moving, running, loading, evacuating, sleeping for 2 hours between sorties, especially when you are a female assault trooper.
This body armor is for training. This one is for combat. It has a prayer on the back. Besides that, I have to have 6 magazines with me, a dump pouch, plus an IFAK, plus a pouch for grenades, tourniquets, plus an assault pack with extra magazines, grenades.
Whoa. Is it possible to lighten it somehow?
Altogether, a minimum of 25 kilograms. I do that at the expense of food. If the guys take a lot of food, then I have 1 liter of water and a few energy bars. Before going out, I don't eat or drink because if nature calls, that's problematic for a girl. You understand?
Oh, that really is a heavy truth that people don't usually talk about. Before we find out why this girl became an assault trooper and why being an assault trooper is easier than being a regular infantryman, subscribe to our channel. That is the best support for us. Thank you. So, the lady with the call sign Panther is the only woman in the assault group of the Leopard Brigade, which was formed based on National Police of Ukraine and is translated as Rage. This brigade is known for participating in the toughest battles on hot sectors of the front. Specifically, they, among others, took part of Bakhmut meat grinder, where the Russian PMC Wagner was practically completely destroyed.
Panther is a member of our family and works with us on equal footing. In battle, she really is a Panther.
First, Panther is a call sign that's convenient enough to pronounce so it can be heard over the radio, even during jamming. Second, Panther sounds combat-ready enough, but this call sign appeared under different circumstances.
In the past, I worked in the police. When I came here and it came to determining call signs, I decided I'd better come up with one for myself before the men did it.
It's hard to imagine what they would have come up with. Their black humor is tied to risk, because every one of these guys, although not planning to die, is ready for meeting the Reaper.
Assault troops always save the last bullet for themselves. Am I capable of doing that? I don't have an answer, but I won't surrender. 100%.
Clear. But why not regular infantry, where there are seemingly fewer risks?
When we go out to work, we usually return to base in a day. We set up, heal up, train, and prepare for the next sortie. But the infantry sits on positions for several dozen days at a time. That's not for me. I feel sorry for those infantrymen.
Yes, the realities of this war are such that the highest probability of getting killed or wounded exists precisely during rotation. That is why fighters literally live in dugouts and trenches. Heavy UAVs deliver food and water to them. Infantry hold positions for 100, 150, and even 200 days. But we found those who are ready for this.
It all started with the fact that the position in front of us fell. We realized that we were next.
And that moment arrived. A Russian assault group launched an attack. Besides the woman with the call sign Virva, the fighter Shustri, and a Colombian volunteer Pino were at the position.
About 12 to 14 minutes in, Shustri passed out. But they had wounded among them too. I heard them screaming and cussing. Pino was throwing grenades, and I was firing right from the dugout.
When one of the Russians almost breached the cramped dugout, Virva, unable to fire aimed shots, went into close quarters.
I saw his leg. I realized Pino wouldn't be fast enough to shoot him. So I pulled out a knife and stabbed him in the leg. He started crawling out, and I started shooting at his legs.
After that, they started gassing the position, and they dropped ammunition from a drone. The shelter caved in. Virva got concussed and lost consciousness for a few hours. But the guys had it worse. Pino joined Shustri, who was already out cold. He took a bad leg injury and ended up pinned down by sandbags.
I hadn't seen any blood yet, didn't realize how bad off I was. When I set and bandaged his leg, I looked at the guys lying there and thought, how am I going to haul them out?
The Russians approached a few times, telling them to surrender. First, nicely, then with threats.
I told them I was alone and had a lot of wounds, just let me die in peace.
But the Russians decided to finish the job once and for all and threw a large mine into the dugout, a TM-62. It's a type of Soviet anti-tank blast mine containing up to 8 kilograms of TNT.
After that explosion, everything collapsed. I was thrown back and hit my head.
Luckily, night fell. The fighters spent several hours digging through the rubble with their bare hands. By the second day, they managed to make contact. Command ordered them to break out to a neighboring position. Virva climbed out first and immediately came under fire from those same Russian assault troops. Despite her concussion and being almost completely deaf, she engaged in combat.
I got lucky because I was behind a log a bit higher up and he was a bit lower. That saved me. I hit him in the head on the fourth shot. The second guy was firing from behind cover and he had an awkward angle. I saw where his legs were sticking out, just switched to full auto and start shooting.
As you realize, for this woman and her brothers in arms, this story ended well. They made it to the neighboring position. Since then, Shustri is recovering, and the Colombian, Pino, terminated his contract and went home.
I understand him because he's young and everyone has their limit. He reached his.
And Virva is back in the ranks. Does she have a limit?
That's a tough question. It seems I don't have a limit because I'm ready to keep going.
Write in the comments which story impresses or inspires you the most. And if you haven't yet grasped the essence of war, then in these playlists you'll find stories that are just as striking. Stay safe.